And now we're going to go to Instagram. I think we're live.
Awesome. It says we're live on there, and we can go live over here. And with that, we are Ask Me Astros. This is Vivi Henriette. I am KristaLyn and Sofia, and every week we go live to chat about the relevant astrology going on, and just to kind of have a coffee or hydration talk, whatever you choose, about what's happening in the sky and what we expect that might mean for all of us during the week.
Yes, and I am not at my home today, which is thus where I have this really weird like lighting situation. And I'm in a house that has neither mugs nor a tea kettle. So I'm drinking coffee in this sort of, I know people do the glass coffee situation, but it was a struggle this morning, and I feel like everyone should know that.
Yeah, it'll really throw off the routine.
Really throwing off the routine. And I think it's funny because we were kind of chatting. I know we had a lot of things we wanted to talk about today, but one of them was the like severe Mercury retrograde feels of the past few weeks. Yeah. And I feel that this to me has been the sort of culmination of.
Yeah. So I've been looking at the Mercury's Cazimi this week, which is going to give us a lot of Mercury energy, but I think it's not necessarily, at least in my opinion, and I'd love to hear your take on this too. Yeah. In my opinion, we're getting uninhibited Mercury this week. And we're not really used to uninhibited direct chariot Mercury triplicity. Like Mercury's got everything Mercury needs this week, especially when that Cazimi occurs on the 14th. And then you also have the testimony of both benefics there. And Saturn is square, but it doesn't feel like it's restraining anything as much as we might expect.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because first off, absolutely. I feel like I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I'm like, why? Like unbridled Mercury, like in my own life, it's just like, you know, as I mentioned, some of the difficulties of my flatmate who had their car stolen and then dropped their phone in the washing machine, right? Like, and then I've like had all these like little car things. It just feels so classic Mercury RX. Like my flight was delayed like 2 hours because like it was like the first reason was weather. And then the pilot got on and said, okay, well, I hate to say this, but I'm actually over hours, so I may not be able to fly the plane. And then it was like, okay, but actually, and this is like after an hour of sitting there, the plane is overweight, so we need 5 of you to leave. Like it was just so classic, like Mercury RX.
Yeah, that's very Mercury, like retrograde or glitchy at least.
Yeah, and I say this because like I think it just reminds us like who Mercury is. Like Mercury is like the trickster. Mercury is the god who like stole the cattle and like.
Well, Mercury is what we usually, the original of what we attribute Uranus to now. Mercury was unpredictable and changeable and, giveth and taketh away and that kind of stuff. And I think we're realizing now that Mercury has so much, is like front and center. And Mercury is not approximating anybody right now. Mercury is being full Mercury. And the whole nature of Mercury is that they approximate whomever they're near. But in this case, everybody's in Gemini. And so they're all kind of answering back to Mercury anyway. So when Mercury gets to actually be center stage and take the mic, this is what we get.
Absolutely. And it's funny because think about the house, like, I don't know, like Sun's chill, but like still reporting to Mercury because Sun's in Mercury's home. I feel like Venus is just over it at this point. Like
creeping towards Cancer. Don't notice me.
Totally over it. And then like Jupiter is like, I feel like Jupiter is like, we have to remember, like, not the most comfortable in Gemini. Like Jupiter is like, I'm trying to like literally, I feel like this is probably what we are experiencing, what Jupiter's experiencing, right? Like, I just want to do big things, live my life, but then has to get like caught up in the details of Mercury. And that is like so not fun.
It's like when the parents are gone and the older brother's in charge or the older siblings in charge. And you're like, no, like, I'm not sure that you're the responsible one here. Why are we listening to you? Not that.
Yeah, like this is also like, and also too, like this was supposed to be so much fun. Like parents are going out of town, like you have these like big expectations, and you're just like this like shitty sibling like micromanaging you.
Right. The power trip of Mercury in domicile and chariot and triplicity and direct.
Which, you know, and then thinking back to it, like that Jupiter is in charge of Saturn, right? So of course, like Saturn's like I really want to reel this in, but also like
Yeah.
in Pisces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, my manager's with the guy I can't stand. So yeah. Well, and then, you know, we were talking about Venus trying to just sort of like separating from it all, right? But Mercury is moving fast right now. Mercury will catch up with Venus by the 17th, and they both go into Cancer together. It's very much you jump, I jump at that point.
Aww. And Venus is like, oh, look, I think I'm a little, well, no, actually, neither of them have, they're both Peregrine, right? Do they, neither of them have,
Venus has a little bit of triplicity going on in Cancer, but Mercury is just cruising, there for the vibes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other part to think about too is like, as you mentioned, Mercury getting ready for the Cazimi. So Mercury in charge, but also so in chariot. So we're not really feeling the burnt up effect. Maybe from a technical perspective, will you explain this to people?
Yeah. So this is especially in like astrological magic practices. You know, you think, oh, we have a planet in chariot, yay! But there's like a 70% chance or higher that planet is not visible, because if it's close to the sun within 30 degrees, 15 degrees is where you look at the potential for a planet to be burned up by the sun. So you have to have them really separate from each other. I actually noticed this in Dan's chart. He has an angular Mercury, Gemini rising, sun at the end of Mercury, Mercury at the beginning, and like catching up. So Mercury direct in terms in triplet, like Dan is a Mercury talisman. It's crazy. And I noticed that last night. I was just like, this with my sad little Mercury makes me a little upset. But when you think of Mercury going into the rays of the sun, chariot is considered a mitigating factor because the sun is answering back to Mercury. So in a sense, the sun is using Mercury's resources to remake Mercury. So Mercury is still kind of, you know, getting the Mercury treatment rather than burning up somewhere and not having any of the resources. It's like the sun is making chicken soup for Mercury on a sick day.
So this is the reason to explain when we talk about a planet's power, like Sun and Venus, or actually you would say any power, we'll say, we'll stick to Mercury. It gets less powerful the closer it gets to the sun because it's unable, it's getting literally burnt up by the sun, and it's leaving visibility. Therefore, it's unable to sort of be as independent under general circumstances.
Yeah, it makes me think of the whole Cazimi combust process makes me think of Icarus.
Ooh. Do tell. Right? Go for it.
So the story of Icarus is, you know, this person developed wings to be able to fly and kind of supersede the limitations of humanity. And in doing that, they made their wings and they used some kind of glue. Icarus used a certain kind of glue to put feathers together, make himself bird wings, flew too close to the sun, and it all burned away. And so he fell out of the sky. If you read Madeline Miller's Circe, Icarus has a bit of a cameo appearance in that book, and you can get an idea of it there too. But the idea of flying too close to the sun so that everything melts away, and then you're left with only what you truly are, which is human in Icarus's case, and how conducive is the environment that Icarus was in midair to a human? Not very. So he fell out of the sky. But for Mercury, the planet continues. So Mercury flies too close to the sun. A planet flies too close to the sun. They get made into what they are, their purest state. And then they must be reborn from that when they come out on the other side of the Cazimi.
Yes. And to come back to this chariot moment, if I'm getting to explain this correctly for people, during that process, a planet tends to lose its strength because it is getting purified, right? But in the case of Mercury, because Mercury's home is Gemini, we could say Mercury, even in that process, still is quite powerful. That's the chariot.
Yeah, there are traditional texts anyway that do say if the planet is in chariot with the sun, then they are not affected. by combustion.
Which is the reason, right?
Mhm.
Under normal circumstances, if Mercury was getting this close to the sun in any other sign, well,
Other than
many
Virgo.
reasons, other than Virgo, it wouldn't be as powerful because it's not its sign, but in this case, it's its own home, and it has that extra chariot power, which is why we're like, it feels very wonky because on one hand, we are experiencing a Mercury, right? Our relationship to mercurial things is changing because there is this phase change taking place. You can speak to in a moment, but at the same time, Mercury's still super strong, which I think is the reason this feels so Mercury retrograde-y, because it's just pure Mercury, which is like,
yeah, it's so Mercury. It's not even the Mercury that we all like. I think of there's a very mercurial saint in Catholic mysticism and folk magics called Saint Expedite. Not a real person, truly just a concept they made up and decided was a saint. And you can, petition Saint Expedite for several things, for very many things. It's very mercurial, right? But you have to be careful because you're not dealing with the archetype of a person who actually lived and breathed and gave us a story. You're dealing with this almost electricity just zapping through the air. So you have to be very specific about what you're asking for from Saint Expedite, because you could be it could be misinterpreted, or it could be the be careful what you wish for situation. Wow. And it reminds me a lot of that when we're dealing with Mercury, especially right now. You ask for Mercury, and we all think about Mercury in the context of other planets, other signs, approximating other things. And then when we get Mercury, is it as cute as we thought it was going to be?
Yeah. And to taking it to this, like, you get what you asked for. I always try to, like, when it comes to Mercury, usually this for me happens around the retrograde, but I try to like suss out like what the lesson is in all this for, maybe in general in my personal life. And for me, it's interesting. I think it's coming up of like, oh, I just need to like have a better relationship with my mercurial things, right? Like, okay, like how am I communicating? How am I organizing things? Because everything feels like it's just been like static in the air. Also thinking about the Thoth deck has, thinking about the minor arcana in tarot, and the first decan of Gemini is the Lord of Interference, which I just love so much because that's what it feels like. Where Jupiter is like static on the line, and it's like I can't remember the other two, but I say this because it feels like for everyone who maybe is like feeling super, super frustrated, like this isn't a permanent thing, and maybe just like pay attention to what comes up. For you, is there like a story that you've been working with?
I'm highly aware that we are both traveling again this week. So I'm looking at that Mercury cazimi, and it's like, well, we'll be in Denver by that point, but we have then Mercury combust to travel under. And if Mercury's been this chaotic and unpredictable up until this point, I'm working on meditation and mindfulness so that if things don't go according to plan, I can return to my center and say, everything that is in my control is in my control. And everything that isn't is going to work out, and I will act when I can act, and just like remembering where I do have control and influence, and then being okay with where I don't, which is not an easy thing for me, but it's a work in progress.
I love it. The phrase that came to mind was let go and let God.
Yeah.
Like, let go and let Mercury.
Right. Which God are we letting here? Because I have concerns.
I know. Wow. I'm actually already in Colorado, which is why, like, again, I have this sort of funky thing, and I'm like already feeling these travel hiccups. So I love this takeaway for people, like more meditation.
And like Mercury, in some languages is referred to as Buddha. So, I mean, if you think about Mercury as meditation, as the mind and the mastery of it, I think Mercury is a huge meditation indicator in a chart, or something that we can use for meditation, especially since it's always changing. And it's where Jupiter is maybe the Abrahamic religions or the even polytheistic religions. I feel like Mercury is more of the Tao. It is what it is. You are a part of it, detach from your outcomes, and you'll be okay. Whereas Jupiter is like, become a part of it and do your rituals and do all these other things. You get the Mercury on the other side, just being like, no, just be at peace with what's going on.
Absolutely. When you say that, like what's coming to mind is I do like transcendental meditation, right? And there's this idea that you have like a mantra-based meditation that you kind of like say over and over again. So you're kind of creating this like static. So you kind of like fall into this trance state. And I think that there's something about that. It's like you're almost like emulating the sort of static buzz that we all sort of live with in like social media and our sort of conversations. And I think Gemini very much is that, of like the surface talk, the surface conversation, surface facts, all of it. And there's something about the like, the wisdom of Gemini, of Mercury and Gemini, is like, how do you just like fall below the chatter, which I think is a very like sort of meditative process. Like, how do you find the sort of stillness in the white noise?
Yeah. Without accidentally like hooking onto a pattern in the white noise and then, obsessing over that too, which some of us do.
Oh yeah. This has been the week of like racing thoughts and like being aware that my mind is just wanting to chew on things. And like,
so many nights this week I couldn't sleep. And I even tried, I brought it up to my therapist and she was like, have you tried green noise? And I'm like, ooh, green noise. It's designed to not have those patterns in it and to be like so solid that like it just kind of cancels out the stuff going on in your head. And I was like, cool, I'm up for this. So I pull up like a Spotify playlist. And of course, at the end of it, it's like going to play ads, or between tracks, it stops and then starts again. And I'm like, that will wake me up. If there is a noise and the noise suddenly goes away. So I could not actually use green noise this week. I had to just figure out my own version of a meditation, which I did, which I would be happy to share because it's actually pretty fun for me. And it does help me sleep. It was another recommendation by my therapist.
I love that. And I want to know more about it. And also, when you said green noise, what first came to mind was Venus, and thinking about Venus and Gemini and being like, yeah, no, like lean on the green noise, the like Venus. And then Venus is like, yo, like I'm fucked up in Gemini too. Like it's not happening.
I have nothing here to work with. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, I should check the comments. Is anyone else feeling this week?
Yeah, I don't have any on Instagram on my side yet, but hi, Amber. Hello, the Vad Creations, Bedhead Queen. Hi, Jody, KAOK, Crazy Sunflower, and Sandra. Good to see you all.
Yeah, like I would love to hear, by the way, if people here and listening, and if you're on IG, if you're YouTube, please share your Mercury stories. I would love to hear them.
Have you been able to sleep this week?
Yes. Not really. It's been like actually it's interesting. I've had really intense dreams this week, but it's also just like during the day being aware of having like compulsive thoughts, like just like the same things. Like this is so feels like ultimate neurotic, but I feel like most of my therapy session this week revolved around the fact that I like ordered a pair of boots and I think they might be the wrong size, but I'm not sure. And it's been driving me crazy, which I know like makes me sound like a crazy person, but it like opened up all these ways that I'm super uncomfortable and I've been fixating on this. And then at the end, my therapist was like, if it's not a fuck yeah, it's a fuck no. And I was like, no. That is not the mantra for Gemini season.
It's a yes on the boots. It's a no on the size.
Yeah. And like, I'm like, do you not understand that I think that's what we're all going through. It's like, but yes, and yes, but then, oh wait, no, I'm not sure because like, I can't do all the yeses at once or something isn't quite right. But it also like, I'm still a yes. It's far more, this is the what we're dealing with.
Yeah. And there's an indecision, right, that comes with this Gemini season. Gemini is mutable. Jupiter is here, not knowing what to do with that. I have a comment over here that says they also haven't been able to sleep. They thought it was because of the heat, but now they're not sure. But I feel like I used to have this shirt that taught me what the word indecision meant. It was I am decisive about the fact that I'm indecisive. And I feel like we're in that phase of like Mercury's in control, but that is indecision. That is sampling. That is the burden of choice as well as the blessing of choice. And so for those of us who are used to a little bit more structure and control, who have fixed angles or anything or something like that, perhaps, we're all like, our routine is being thrown off so much and it's not comfy. And now I have to do something new, but there are so many factors I have to think about now. Like last week, I considered, because of the bad sleep, what I did was I stayed up until midnight, worked out at midnight because it counted for the next day, according to my watch, then went back to sleep for another 5 hours. And I was like, this is nice. I'm waking up after sunrise. Wow, maybe I should change when I work out. And then it was like, no, factor A, B, C, D, E, and F say that's not going to work. But it was nice to try it.
I love that for you, like finding, because you are such a fixed person.
I am.
And like,
I'm so
and
fixed.
finding the ways that you can work with mutability. Like you're like, okay, like I can have this new temporary solution, but be okay with like, I know that like end result, I need to go back to what works, which I think that that's, you know, you're sharing this, but I think that's probably helpful for a lot of people, because you think you bring up a bigger point. People who have really fixed charts, fixed lives, fixed approaches to lives, I think are going to be really put off by this Jupiter and Virgo.
Jupiter and Gemini, you mean?
Yes. See, I can't even remember where it is.
I wish it were Virgo. At least then we have some Earth going on, you know, like maybe we make new processes, but it's supportive. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you feel do you think that's a correct statement, that this is actually something for people like to consider in their lives on a larger scale for the next, you know, year?
Absolutely. And like from personal experience with this, when Jupiter came in, Jupiter conjoined with my lot of fortune. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be great. Jupiter on my lot of fortune. Like I know it's in Gemini, but it's still Jupiter, right? Like that almost talks of astropositivity, which exists. And I was just like, cool, what good thing is going to happen with my fortune? So health, wealth, well-being, that kind of stuff. I have 2 technically elective surgeries planned this year now that happened and were scheduled right around when Jupiter was on my lot of fortune. And I'm like, oh, we need maintenance. Got it. Whoops. Like, thank you for making it possible for me to undergo these surgeries that are going to throw me off, but long-term are going to set me up for success. Yay.
Well, could we say that the positive thing might be that there's, I mean, if I'm correct, there's surgeries that you want, right?
They're necessary for longer term goals. One is one that I am very much looking forward to, though.
Okay. And then, but also maybe there is something nice about Jupiter being there as maybe a balm, even though it's Jupiter and Gemini. Do you think, what are your thoughts on that?
I think also the fact that before this year, I would never have had the means to accomplish these things. Like my smile is going to get fixed from this. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to be more okay with the way that my body feels for me after another one. And I'm very much looking forward to that. I would not have been able to do that before this year because the means and the resources came together to allow for it to happen. So yeah, it's all happening at once during a Mercury ruled perfection year for me. Go figure. But the blessing is I can do it. Whereas before I wasn't able to.
I love that. See, there are things we have to hold on to the things that we love.
Yep. Yeah. Always look at the bright side of life.
We have a question. I hope this person's still here from Instagram. And I think I'm gonna I don't want to mispronounce your name, but it's Jonah. Jonah, I'm not pronouncing your last name because I don't want to fuck it up. So Jonah says, what does the current situation say for giving gifts?
For giving gifts. You know, so many of my closest friends and family have birthdays in Gemini season that I'm very good at this. I would say, like, if you're giving a gift, let it be something that's not a long-term commitment kind of thing. Like, you're not saying, I know this deep secret about you. It's, hey, haha, this inside joke of ours. How great is it? And it doesn't have to be something that they keep forever as a keepsake, but it's something that just commemorates the moment. This is the perfect time for giving like food gifts or experience gifts, because it's not something that has to stay, but it is something that creates memories or brings up memories that are really lovely.
You know what this reminds me of? 2 things. Okay, what kind of, am I like an airline steward? Okay. Anyway, for those watching the video, which is all of you probably. 2 things. I had a friend of mine once who always said, books are the worst thing you can give someone as a gift, unless they ask for it. because there's this thing about Gemini and you're like, okay, like it's an experience, it's kind of an experience, but it's also a pressure. So thinking about like what not to do, like if you give someone a gift, especially like, oh man, I think you'd really love this book. Then there's the like, oh man, now I have a thing to do. You've given me a task, and that can be overwhelming for a lot of people.
And like an experience, I love the idea of a book as an experience, by the way, but like going to a concert together or going to see a Broadway show. One of the things Dan and I have booked recently is Book of Mormon is coming to Richmond. We're going to go see it. We're stoked. And so those experience things are just like, this is a memory we're going to make together. And it's going to be really fun. And it's going to make us bond more, but it doesn't have this long-term kind of, you must value this forever thing that maybe a Taurus might have, or even a Scorpio might be like, this should be meaningful for you for the rest of your life. And Gemini's like, I just want to live today. Thanks. So.
Oh my God. You know, years ago, I was dating someone who's a very mercurial person. And for Christmas every year is like a very non-secular Christmas, right? As a gift to all of their friends, they would write a Christmas pageant and invite all of their friends to perform and read it together. Like that was the big thing. Like every year they wrote a new Christmas pageant. And I kind of like, I mean, it's a lot of work, but I love this idea of like making a little play for your friends and being like, we're going to perform this together.
That's beautiful. I feel like Mercury loves Friendsgiving.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like that's, you know, it's not during a Mercury season necessarily or anything like that, that Friendsgiving occurs, but the fact that it's friends getting together to experience together sounds awesome for that kind of that energy. It doesn't have to be with food or something like that. I think, you know, because of the time of year, this energy takes place under, it's more of the getting out and going somewhere, maybe going on a road trip kind of thing.
I was going to say, like, under normal circumstances, I would say go on a road trip, but I feel like this is a little travel wonky time, particularly.
Well, and for a Mercury, though, wouldn't that be half the fun? Is, you know, the stuff that goes wrong along the way. Maybe that's the true meaning. Not the friends you made along the way, but everything you all went through together along the way.
Oh my God, you know, you're totally right. I just was on a little baby road trip to like stay in this yurt, and it was like little minor things went wrong, but it was just cute enough to make it entertaining for us. So I love that. Yeah. So the recap and gift giving is, I'll let you do the recap.
The recap on gift giving in lieu, you know, in understanding of Jupiter in Gemini, is that you are better off giving experiences and creating memories together. Without the deep thought gift giving, you know, the obligation gift giving does not have to happen right now.
I love it.
Yeah, we also have someone in the comments here on StreamYard, Kay, saying, I love this because Jupiter has been conjunct my Venus this weekend, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but it is setting me up for some long-term success. I feel you, Kay. I feel you.
Yeah. You know, the other part I really want to like throw by you before we move on from the Mercury Cazimi moment is thinking about the phase change for a moment. Because I think we often think, I often think about Mercury's phase change in the inferior conjunction, which is the retrograde, right? So we always go, okay, like the beauty of Mercury retrograde is it goes from being an evening star to a morning star. So this sort of new beginning. But I think also maybe there's something about this is like all this mercurial junk being stirred up, right? Like Mercury is leaving the morning star period to enter the reflective period. And I think that there's something to that. Like there's still something very in like kind of continuing the Mercury retrograde theme. There's something about this period now that's like, okay, like finish up your day job, finish up the work that you have to do, because we're going to go to the period where it's like, we're going to do the review. We're leading up to the Mercury retrograde in a sense.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like to remember, like you just made me think that Mercury is not a day planet or a night planet unless it is, right? So Mercury is the only planet that is a day planet when it's a day planet, and it's a night planet when it's a night planet. So it just is what it is. And it never has to try to pretend to be anything else, or it never has to feel out of its element, because it is the element that it is in. And that's something that's really admirable about Mercury. Again, for how fixed I am, it's like, that sounds nice. I can't even picture it, but it sounds cool. And so just knowing that Mercury is going from being like day Mercury, yeah, it's like the summer vacation or the weekend that we're coming into now, where we're coming into the evening and all of that activity of being a day planet, that energy was there. And now maybe we spent it and we're naturally coming into this phase of wanting more recreation, of wanting more art, that kind of thing.
Okay, this is perfect. I think I have a good analogy here. I was spending some time this weekend with, Jordan, who's astro banditry, and having this like very like conversation with him, because I've decided there are two types of people in life, right? There are doers and chillers. And I'm not saying the chillers can't do, but like, I feel chillers, it's okay. So doers to me are very like morning Mercury. It's like, what are we doing? What's the plan? Like,
Type A.
What are our activities? Huh?
Yeah. Type A.
Type A. Yeah, like you're like, what's the workout? What's happening? Right? Like, what are our things? What are we doing? Like, where's this going? Like, I'm like, oh, we have a whole day. Okay, like, are we gonna watch a movie? Are we gonna have some sort of fun activity? Right? There's that sort of like, like, are we gonna go like skydiving? Like, whatever it is, it's just like the thing, right? Like a doer. And like chillers are people who will just be like, oh, you have a whole day, and they're just like, oh, I'm just gonna be here. Like, I'm just here. And I'm like, what? You don't have a book, you don't have things, you don't have activities, like you're just literally like, I'm just here, I'm in the moment.
Blows my mind. They do. I can prove it. So like the other night I was having a hard time sleeping, and Dan and I sleep in different rooms, but sometimes when one of us is having a hard time, we chill out together and we'll like talk until we can get tired enough to fall asleep. And I fell asleep and he didn't want to wake me up, so he just sat there for 2 hours doing nothing. I was like, what did you do? How did you occupy your time? I'm so sorry now, because I feel like I bored the heck out of you when you could have been sleeping. And he's like, no, I just looked outside for 2 hours. Yeah. I'm like, did you die?
Point proven. Doers and chillers. And the thing is, like, we are going for the chill period, and I think that's why it's so hard for people to like, oh no, it's Mercury, we're just gonna reflect on it, we're just gonna sit with our thoughts. Like, so like, I think that is jarring for some of us.
Yeah, like, as a doer, according to your definition, I can pencil in chill time. I can say like, this hour is a do nothing hour, and it's lovely. But then after that, it's like, cool, now what? And so I agree with your assessment there. I think that's really interesting to apply to the Mercury changing phases.
Yeah. So there we go. Just have this as some validation. If you too have experienced a wonky chaos, anxiety driven, no sleep week, we are right here with you.
Yeah. And pull out the journals, guys, because we're going to be processing those thoughts now.
Would you like us to take us into the next bit of astrology you're excited about on that?
Yeah, excited about. I mean, if you're talking about the one I think you're talking about, excited may not be the word. Go ahead.
No. Go
on. So are we talking about the event actually happens before the Mercury Cazimi? This actually perfects tomorrow on the 11th. This is Mars square Pluto. And I find this interesting because let me look at my handy dandy chart here. I don't know why this is saying that, actually, because it's not perfect on this day. I think the program that was trying to tell me that the Mars square Pluto thing is giving me an orb, because my astrologer brain was like, wait a second, check your sources. Mars is in Taurus and Pluto is not back in Capricorn yet. Or no, it's square. Yes. Okay. Nope. I'm just Mercury brained. It is this situation of Mars now being in Taurus. Let me update my chart so I can see it as it's actually happening here. Update to now. There we go. So yes, we have tomorrow, Mars will hit the 1 degree and 40 some minute degree of Taurus, which will square Pluto in Aquarius, which is square because they are both fixed lines. Literally, I think I just did in my Patreon this week. So apologies to all my patrons watching this when I was like, hey, oh no, this is for next week. We're talking about the cardinal angles and, what does that mean? So I got it right in the report for you guys. Don't worry. I got it wrong here because it's live. So what we're seeing is this Mars square Pluto. And that's a lot of power shift, power challenge. And of course, there's what happening across the whole world right now, election cycles. It's insane. So the power pivots for, for your good or your ill, in your opinion, whatever it is, there is a lot of shift in dynamic happening right now, which is appropriate to the aspect when we look at it.
Yeah. And something to, in your personal lives, because Pluto in Aquarius is relatively new, I would assume that like this Mars square, even if it's not like huge for you, just kind of like maybe note what tensions come up, because it's really, I think, like the square from Mars is really bringing out a story that's probably going to take longer to unfold. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah. Because, Pluto is going to be going back into Capricorn and coming back into Aquarius. So Pluto is retrograde right now. So this is happening during a retrograde cycle. It's not going to recur during the direct because Mars will have moved on by then. So it is sort of this internal thing that the world is going through, this, like, everybody's whispering about it. And Mars is like saying, hey, but decisions are being made. So, whisper and keep it to yourself as much as you want to, but just know choices are being made and you're part of the choice. Which, Mars is direct, is in Taurus, the sign of his detriment right now. But what do we have in Taurus? It slows Mars down. I think is one of the biggest drags that Mars experiences in Taurus. But that doesn't mean that we as people are without resources. We're just having to really face what resources we have and use what is within our power. And, in some situations, we don't feel like we have a ton of influence, but we have to dig for it, dig through the soil like Mars would and just find it. And that's where you'll find your own power to be able to say, how can I stick close to myself and say what feels powerful in my own life? And then how do I, as an individual, make a difference in my society by being who I am and by making the choices I make for me? Because you are affecting, like, the whole ripple effect thing all the time. And sometimes we get so caught up in how do we be effective that we forget that we are.
Yes. The thing that also more nuance that's coming to me as you're saying this, as thinking about like Mars and Taurus, right? And that it's that square, the fixed axis, right? Of, Pluto and Aquarius. And the word that's coming to mind is frustration, right? Like Mars really wanting to Mars, but being slowed down and feeling like I can't move. And then thinking at the same time about the astrology around the Mercury stuff, right? There's, I think, part of why this 2 weeks has been so like loud for people is there's this sort of like buzzing of just wanting to like do all the things, right? That's the Gemini of just like the multiplicity of choice. And I think when we hit that square, maybe that's a moment in the story, there's some frustration of like, like I want to act, but I can't I don't feel resourced enough. I can't, whatever it is, but there's might be, some feelings of frustration. And like, maybe even just like, if you're, having an understanding of that and trying to like, for at least for our personal spaces, cultivate a good meditation practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Because even if we think about, how real is this feeling to us right now, looking at the moon who brings everything down to us is in Leo, aspecting both of these signs. So we have the trine to Mars's sign, we have the square to Mars's sign in Taurus, and then we have a sextile to the Jupiter, Mercury, Sun, Venus sign of Gemini. Fortunately, by degree, the moon is already at 10 degrees, so we're separating from Jupiter and we're moving towards Mercury. That's where we're at. So again, that meditation is the solution to the frustration you may have been feeling over the weekend or even just this morning. If you're feeling like you're in a funk, give yourself a minute. Don't be for a hot second and see who you find yourself as.
Oh yeah. Like, I don't know about you, but this has been coming up for me quite a lot this week. Again, kind of bringing it back to the sort of general, like, zeitgeist of the sort of mercurial is like, oh, maybe I don't, like, reminding myself, I don't have to do all the things right now. Right. Like, I think maybe part of that frustration is like wanting to like do the thing now, or wanting to act, or really wanting to act on that square or that pressure, and just kind of reminding yourself that maybe like this is a good week to practice like purge and pause, right?
Yep.
Like whether it's like, oh, like the email you want to send sounds so silly, but it's like, write it out, forget about it. Do
Yep.
like, you know, do the thing, forget about it. Purge and
I
pause.
literally did that over this weekend. Yeah. There was a lot of things that had to be managed over the weekend. And it was a lot of like, do a first draft, sleep on it, or give it a couple hours, or send it to someone else for ideas, and then come back to it and see if you still like it. That did pay off. It worked really well.
Same. Yeah. I've noticed myself getting a little surly, and I was like, oh, okay. I wrote a bunch of emails, not even like the angry ones, even like ones that were like, and that's the other thing too, right? Like this was a good week for me for emails of things that I had to like make decisions around or send, like, even if there wasn't even emotion around it, I would just do like, be really mindful to make a draft and step away. Not because I thought it was like angry or was really purging something, because I was being mindful that my thoughts are racing so much right now that within a few hours after sitting on whatever it is and digesting it, I might change my mind. And so sort of to avoid this sort of very mercurial situation of having to send someone 1,000 emails and be like, actually, I meant this. Actually, I meant that. Just like pausing.
Yeah. Let yourself know what you mean before you share it with others.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. We are coming to this. I know we are coming to the hour. Any, I don't know, just any final thoughts or any other big transits you're thinking about?
You know, I'm thinking about next week a lot, mostly because I had to plan ahead for it to schedule like social media and stuff, because we'll be together in Denver learning more from Demetra George, which I'm so excited about. I cannot wait to like, this is the like scholastic astrology that I love. And I'm just so excited to be immersed in it for like a whole week. But then when we come back on the 21st, or on the 20th, we have the solstice. On the 21st, we have that full moon in Capricorn. And one of the things I think a lot of people are already almost leaning into and feeling a little bit, maybe because Mars is also in an earth sign, is that rejection sensitivity. That FOMO and rejection sensitivity. And my advice has been the same as yours. Give it a minute. Like, don't say, hey, you're ignoring me, or don't say, are you mad at me? Give it like 3 days and see if you still feel the same way. And that kind of on again, off again is probably going to continue, and maybe even feel either much better or even a little bit more awkward when we finally do get Mercury, Venus, and the Sun into Cancer, because Cancer loves feeling included, right? So you're going to find out where you feel included, whether it's by that affirmation and positive reinforcement of you feel included where you are, or by the, I don't feel like I fit where I am. Now I got to find where I belong, because that exists. I just need to, you know, put myself in those positions. So one of the things is kind of journeying into your own community at this point. And Mercury, really, the Gemini stuff sets us up for a lot of connections with people and conversations and thoughts that can set us up for, I have ideas of where I want to go if I don't feel like this is it.
I love that. Can we end by like a moment here? A quick, for people who don't know what rejection sensitivity is, maybe talking a little about what that is. Because people might experience it and not have a word for it or understand where it's a thing. And then on the other hand, like people who are encountering that from other people, maybe we can give them some advice on like how you can make the people in your life who have rejection sensitivity feel safe without being annoyed.
Beautiful idea. So rejection sensitivity is something that is often associated or called rejection sensitivity dysphoria in association with a lot of types of neurodivergence. However, that doesn't mean only neurodivergent people experience it. At some point in your life, you may have felt this too. It's the, oh my God, is that person mad at me? It's when someone puts a period in the text message and you're like, you're angry. And you start really cycling in your mind on, this person's mad at me. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you make this big scenario in your head about how awful it is and how much people hate you and how much of a burden you are. And that may not be the reality. You know, I'll be totally open. You and I had a conversation over the weekend where we jumped on today, and both of us, I think, had to reinforce a level of rejection sensitivity that we felt of like, are we good? Yes. Yeah. And so we really, I think we handled it with a lot of emotional maturity, and I was very grateful for your part and for all of it. But in a world where not everyone is being super conscious, sometimes it's hard to be aware that this other person may be feeling rejected by that and maybe panicking now that you don't like them or that they did something wrong. This is a huge thing that was reinforced in high school if you were living any experience close to mine. And so one of the ways that I would recommend, if you want to do well with helping to mitigate the option of rejection sensitivity, is to just be very clear of like, hey, I have this feeling, it's associated with this, and I don't want you to feel like I'm doing this to you. It's over here. Like when we jumped on today, you picked up that I was in a funk. I'm out of it now because we're talking and I'm having a good time. But you're like, are we good? And I said, yeah, I'm in a funk. It's not you. And that immediately removes the blame or the story that you start cycling in your head of it is me. And that's something that you can absolutely help. It's just letting people know where you're at and being honest. Do you have any things that you would add though, Vivi?
Yeah. Like one of the things that I've noticed for me, like before I could really figure out, like realizing this was a thing was tremendous for me, because I'm one of those people, like, you know, like you're always kind of picking up on nonverbal cues. Yeah. And so what I've noticed too in relationships with people, you know, friends, whatever, I'm the kind of person's like, are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? Because I didn't understand what was going on and I just couldn't like suss it out. And, you know, and some people are like, fine, they're, you know, secure enough to be like, no, I'm not mad at you. It's okay. And then I've, you know, figured out language around this. But other people, it might make them feel insecure because then they feel like they're being emotionally monitored, because then they're just like, oh my God, like, do I look angry all the time? Why does this person always think I'm mad? And then it just can be this sort of like perfect storm. So, you know, if you are experiencing this rejection sensitivity, right, it's like understanding there's ways to, first off, understanding what's going on within you, right? Like this is a thought. And while I feel this, I can't validate it unless I get information from this other person. And a nice way to do that would be like, hey, you know, to use our example today, like, you know, we had like a conflict point. Are we good now? And you're like, oh yeah, no, we're good. I'm just in a funk. Done. Right. But if I just said, are you mad at me? It could have triggered something further. Right. On the same hand, like if someone's, you know, says to you like, hey, I'm having this feeling, right? It's not you, but I want to see if this is real. Listen to that person, right? Don't just like, oh, like, why are you always did it? You know what I mean? Like, so I think from both ends, it's a lot of like, you know, reminding ourselves that communication isn't something that comes naturally to us. It's something we have to work on.
Yeah. I mean, I do this with Dan all the time, where it's like, this thing is so stupid. And then I'll be like, but it's not you that made it stupid. It's the situation that is frustrating. And like, you're not in trouble and you did nothing wrong. And we do that for each other all the time because we're so used to, if this is stupid, it's somehow my fault. I did it. I'm stupid. And it's not, it's the situation. And so just, it does take effort. There is some elbow grease that goes into it. It is a square aspect, if you will. But it's so worth it because immediately it becomes the two of you as a team. The human beings involved are on it. They're together. They're working together. There's cooperation, co-creation, whatever you want to call it. Then the situation becomes the problem and nobody's feeling gets hurt. And you can find solutions because nobody's panicking.
I love this. And coming full circle to sort of the astrology of the moment, right? It's thinking about this idea of rupture and repair, right? Yeah. So maybe all of this sort of mercurial noise is very frustrating. It's bringing up conflict and sort of, you know, interpersonal dynamics that don't always feel so good, but there is the opportunity there to really like bring things to the fore and suss them out and create better relationships out of this astrology.
Yeah. And if someone says something, you're like, hey, you said this and I took it to mean this. Is that what you meant? Or did I get that wrong? And then they can be like, oh my gosh, no, I meant this. Nothing's wrong then. It's so beautiful when that happens because it's like, oh, thank goodness. Wow. I really, you know, took it that way. I'm glad we got the clarity. And that's huge.
I love it. This is the final takeaway. It is not, this Mercury situation is really just us learning our communication skills.
Yep. It's us sampling different ways to connect with each other so that we can do it in the best way moving forward.
Oh God, that's perfect for Gemini. I love that. Sampling. Yeah. Perfect word.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. With that, we are at the hour. This has been amazing. I'm going to see you in Colorado, which we're going to be in Colorado next Monday, right?
Yeah, Monday's the last day of the workshop, and then I fly out on Tuesday, which is Dan's birthday. So I'm going to get home, like, hopefully no flight issues on Tuesday, so I can get home for Dan's birthday.
So if you're up for it, maybe we could do an AMA early on Monday before class.
Yeah, in the same room.
You're going to be in the same room, and I have my mics reporting for you, reporting from Colorado. We can give updates on the retreat for people, which will be fun.
Yeah, I'm game.
Okay, love it. Have a beautiful day, friend.
Bye, guys.
Bye.